We found that the economy of war using drones and robots. By the way, I'm going to talk about robots and drones equally because they're not exactly the same, but they are part of the same family.
So would you say drone pilots, right, maybe working on like an Xbox controller?
Yes and no. We've actually really advanced what we call swarm operations in the last 2 years. The longest distance we flew drones was 9,000 kilometers away. We had drones flying inside buildings, and the operators were in Japan. And the reason, not the reason, but the way we actually made that happen is because we don't fly our drones manually. Riskiest missions. So for example, an urban area like Gaza has the most risk, as opposed to an open field where you can hide, or interactive, complex missions. And when we talk about like indoor robotics or indoor drones, it's more urban. They have to go from the outside to inside. They have to move from GPS to non-GPS operations.
Welcome to another episode of Israel Tech. I'm your host, Yoel Israel. I'm really excited with our guest here today. We have Aviv Shapira, co-founder and CEO of Xtend. But before we get to Aviv, what you guys should do is obviously like, follow, and subscribe. In order for us to continue to democratize the Israeli tech ecosystem, widening the tent and bring more people in and bringing great content to people like you and people you love, we need your help. So please, join us as we get together to elevate Israeli tech on social media. Aviv, thank you so much for hosting us in your office.
Thank you for being here.
Welcome we were in, thank you, yeah. Great offices, really cool stuff going on. We're gonna learn a lot about drones, or I guess you'll be talking, I'll be learning. We were introduced by Lital Leshem, probably one of the coolest women I ever met, from Protego with your VC. We interviewed her at Google for Startups a few months ago. And when I asked her who I should interview, immediately it was like, oh, yeah, Aviv, you would love it also. She also said like we'd vibe, which I totally get that. Just looking around your office, things going on here, we can probably just do like 2 hours just covering all of the cool, unique things that you have here.
Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about those
things.
We'll
do that.
Next time.
Next episode.
Maybe a follow-up. But we're here to talk about Xtend, drone technology, AI, and everything that's involved in warfare. And Israel's in the middle of a war on many fronts, and then there's of course the war in Ukraine, Russia, and there's a lot going on. So before we kind of more get into Xtend, tell us, how has drones changed so rapidly up until now, and where do you see it going in the coming decade?
So it really changed warfare completely. What happened in the last 3 years has been mind-blowing. We found that the economy of war using drones and robots. By the way, I'm going to talk about robots and drones equally because they're not exactly the same, but they are part of the same family.
Are they just flying robots?
So a drone is a flying computer. That's it. It's a computer with 4 engines. It has a payload and it does something. A robot is the same thing. It's just rolling on the ground, walking on the ground. Same for boats, surface vehicles. That's the family, unmanned systems. But people call them drones for some reason. It's sticky. Drones, robots have been changing warfare completely. It started actually, many years ago, but the hyper growth has been through the war between Ukraine and Russia. They found out that a $500 drone can actually create damage and impact to some traditional things like a tank, or what we've seen last week on aircrafts, dealing with different types of threats, and for a really low cost. That's been the most, I would say, the main reason: the cost of kill, the economy of war. And around that, we've seen many types of use cases around drones and robotics. Israel, obviously, the war started by Hamas actually killing our eyes and ears using drones, right? So very sophisticated types of operations, which made the difference.
So that sounds really scary in the sense where things are going, because the West and Israel, we've invested so much in Merkava and tanks and things.
Yeah.
Is the future of warfare, is it possible to have tanks with drones in the future?
So they're not going to replace tanks.
Is the capabilities of drone technology, since it's so cheap to take out such a big target, like you were saying what's going on in Ukraine, Russia, is it possible that tanks might be something that's obsolete because it's no match against drones?
I would say in the long run, yes, they would be. There is a conception that in order to win the war, you have to have boots on the ground. And when you have boots on the ground, I'd rather be in a tank and not on my foot, right?
Yes.
But I don't think so. Now that humanoids are becoming more common and our ground robots and drones are out there, I can see tanks coming out of fashion. Also, by the way, fighter jets. It's the same concept of older military platforms that are now being changed by this concept or technology theme of robots, and coupled with AI, it's a game changer. Because AI and robots are the future of combat, of security in general.
So we're going to see the future. So how long until you think fighter jets are unmanned?
First of all, some of them are unmanned today. If you look at a Reaper, a Predator, it's not a jet aircraft, but it is doing, loitering munition. It's dropping bombs. It's, the fact that a drone can fly for like 48 hours without a pilot needing to go to the toilet, or eat, that's definitely the future. Why do you need to carry all of this safety gear and equipment around the pilot to keep him warm and safe and comfortable? If you remove all of that and you put instead more fuel, more bombs, more technology, you get a much better solution. And the technologies around remote operations are very, very advanced today. So at the end of the day, I'm not sure I would need a pilot that is very limited on the G power and the whole temperature and surrounding. So yes, that's happening right now.
Before I continue, let me tell you about our partners, The Recruitery. The Recruitery places go-to-market talent for early and growth stage cybersecurity companies. The Recruitery specializes in recruiting and retaining top talent in global markets. If you're looking for a recruitment company to help your cybersecurity company close cultural gaps and find great talent on the ground that can help you scale, we recommend you also partnering with our partner, The Recruitery. And now, back to the show. So would you say drone pilots, right, maybe working on like an Xbox controller, they're also eventually going to be obsolete too, because it's all going to be autonomous?
Yes and no. We've actually really advanced what we call swarm operations in the last 2 years. So that means that you don't need to fly one person flying one drone. You can have today one person controlling a swarm or a team of robots and drones. It can be ground, maritime, aerial, working together as a team. This is what we've done in the past 2 years. All of them work under the same operating system. We call it XOS, and that has been a huge benefit to the war now in Israel, both in the south and the north. Part of what we've contributed to the war, to IDF. But now, when you look at this pilot, operating these drones, how can I replace that pilot with an AI pilot, right? That's when things are getting more interesting, because what we've been doing in the last 2 years, we've been watching what the pilot does. So he goes through the window, he looks at the rooms, sometimes he engages with a munition payload. These actions can be mimicked and replicated by AI pilots. So it's in the very near future, you're going to see AI pilots actually controlling this swarm of drones, and maybe just someone just watching them and supervising them just to make sure they're doing the right thing, also from an ethical point of view.
Did you say that the Israeli military is currently using swarm of drones, correct?
Yeah, our technology basically allows an untrained operator, soldier, to fly a swarm of drones from anywhere in the world.
How big is the swarm?
There's no limitation really to the number of drones physically. They're all nodes on a network, like different types of computers connected to a network. Remember, a drone is only a flying computer. So how many computers can you connect to your Wi-Fi, right? It's the same question.
There's no limit,
10,
really.
100, 10,000. It's all about understanding what is the mission. Is my mission to catch a bad guy inside a building? So I need 3 to 4 drones, right? I need one drone to watch the house from above. Then we need 2 drones to go from the window. That's more or less it. So like 3 to 5 is the magic number for like normal operations today. Mm-hmm. What we saw in Russia last week, that was a bit larger. But if you look at the details, every one of these
were isolated.
Yeah, I mean, at the end, there was one pilot flying one drone. So that technology was not novel in that sense. The whole operation was very, very creative, obviously, but the technology itself wasn't that sophisticated.
Let's talk about that operation, because I think a lot of people are saying this may be a turning. We may look back and say this is a turning point when it comes to drones, when it comes, especially offensively, even within the war. So maybe you could tell us about the operation.
Yeah, of course.
What are the similarities between what you're doing here at Xtend?
So we watched on the news together, and we all got videos. And so what the Ukrainians did, that was a novelty. They actually infiltrated Russian ground with...
Deep in Russia.
Deep in Russia, with trucks that looked ordinary. They can carry food or whatever equipment. And actually inside these trucks were drones. which were hid on the rooftop, on the sides, and so on. But that was the novelty, and that was the creativity that actually made that possible. The drones themselves were normal drones. Some of them were using fiber. Some of them were just using RF communication. They basically flew for like 2 kilometers, and they hit and killed and destroyed large aircrafts, which we've seen this happening in the last 3 years. So we already know that drones can carry weapons and kinetic payloads, and they can destroy, it can be like a bomber, it can be a tank, or it can be a building or a car or a person. So that wasn't anything new. The novelty here was how can you infiltrate so deep into Russia and do this very synchronized operation. That was the magic here.
There was implications that once they were in, and obviously human operated, but once started, they were autonomous largely. Is that true, or was that
according to videos, they use GPS. There was no GPS denied environments because they were deep in Russia, so there was no reason why to cut down GPS. And they actually flew between waypoints. You can actually see that in the videos, one waypoint to another. When they were above the target, someone took control with manual sticks control, pushed down, that bomber, and that's it. It was over. It was based on very standard DJI-like, flight maneuvers.
And you'd say in the future that won't happen. In the future, it would all be autonomous, right? I mean, but the other thing was interesting. They needed to be within a few kilometers.
Because of the fiber length and the radio length.
Right.
Let's look at some of the things that we are doing. So the longest distance we flew drones was 9,000 kilometers away. We had drones flying inside buildings, and the operators were in Japan. And the reason, not the reason, but the way we actually made that happen is because we don't fly our drones manually. We don't have even manual sticks control in our system. What we have is a system that actually sends a task to the drone. So for example, go through the window, pick this, throw it there, hit that target. These are tasks. You can hand over these tasks to the AI pilot from anywhere in the world. In that case, Japan to Israel. I was flying 3 drones in a building. We can share the video later so you can see.
Cool.
And it was easy. I was just orchestrating these robots all around the building. I can be on the moon. It doesn't even matter. So going back to that Russian example, I can be here in Tel Aviv, and I can have these drones somewhere in the world, taking off of a truck, flying to the relevant waypoint, and hitting these vehicles without any humans on the ground. This is how we save lives. This is how we actually disconnect between physical people on the ground that fly and operate robots and the robots themselves. That's the big novelty that Xtend has done in the past 5 years, disconnecting between humans and robots. And if you think about that, on the economical side as well, this is what costs money. People on the ground, they have to travel, they have salaries, they are in risk. So if you actually disconnect them and have them doing remote operations, that's the secret of scaling up robotics in the world. Not only for defense, by the way.
Not only for defense. So in the private sector, and because now the also in military, China basically has a monopoly on DJI on drones. Mm-hmm. Do you see that as a challenge to the West and to Israel in particular?
Mm-hmm. First of all, yes. The fact that they're selling drones 1/10 the price of any of their competitors in the Western world is basically stopping a lot of companies from growing and selling. For companies like us selling for defense, private security, law enforcement, it's not really a challenge because Chinese drones are actually being banned and not really wanted in these markets. But to my understanding, DJI are actually selling drones at a loss. They have very strong computations on these drones, like an NVIDIA and Qualcomm, so they're very, very advanced. And they're selling it for a price lower than the price of the components themselves.
Is that because they want to, like how China would manipulate their currency in order to control exports? They're manipulating the prices, subsidizing it, so there's no room for competition?
Yes, and I also heard that they basically, again, from outside sources to get information. So a drone, again, is a flying computer. It has a microphone, has a camera. So they basically know what's happening in the world. They have videos of everywhere.
That's great.
By the way, drones are a small segment of that. Security cameras are a big thing.
Right.
So they have security cameras all over the world. All of the security cameras are connected to Chinese servers. So they basically know everything. Okay. That's the big story.
Do you want to scare anyone else with anything else? I mean, now let's talk about now we should talk about weaponizing it.
I read it online. But
you read it. But it's by the way, logically, we just see the actions of the Chinese Communist Party.
In our space, we're not allowed. I mean, our end users are not allowed to use Chinese drones.
Yeah, for good reason.
For national security.
So then, tell us about the supply chain. Does Israel manufacture drones here? Where are your drones manufactured?
So we cater each one of our markets locally.
So like multinational more than international?
It's because what we've learned is that every country in times of war doesn't want to rely on anyone else.
That's legitimate.
So we have a manufacturing facility in Israel, in Singapore today. We have one in Europe as well, and obviously in the US. The US is our main manufacturing facility because that's our biggest market, that's our biggest customer. We have a 20,000 foot facility in Tampa, Florida. It's supplying most of the demand to the US market, but sometimes we take some of it to other countries as well, just because it's the biggest and the most fully operational.
Are your clients only government?
No, we actually started, it's very, very historic. We actually started as a gaming company. We're not in gaming anymore. We actually opened the league where anyone can fly drones like that quickly. We reduced training time by 99% using our software.
Should have started with this. This is
but today we cater mostly police, fire, search and rescue, private security, so replacing security guards, and defense. Defense is, the last 2 years have been the biggest for us, but it's not the biggest market. The biggest market is actually security, protecting airports, oil and gas facilities,
schools, and unfortunately synagogues and any Jewish building
even
abroad.
one day will protect your home. So
amazing.
Imagine a dog robot sitting in front, waiting for something to happen, and when something happens, it's fully autonomous, but a human can go in and actually intervene.
And override. Amazing.
Override, yeah.
Could I get my neighbor's dog to stop barking?
Yeah, it can also bite it.
Even better. Now I got my money. Maybe you can get them to clean up after their dogs.
Maybe, I don't know if you saw, but we are partners with Boston Dynamics, for example. So
talk about that. How did that come about? Can you tell us about like the back end of the bit, what is it like to partner with Boston Dynamics?
Amazing company. They were acquired by Hyundai, so we work with both of them. So our software does solve some of the biggest problems in robotics. Executing complex missions by anyone and from anywhere in the world. Any one of these factors is huge. Together, it's a game changer. So Boston Dynamics is an amazing hardware, amazing robot, amazing APIs. But where they were struggling is how do they actually complete a complex mission. For example, an elevator. I mean, any kid from the age of 4 or 5 can probably push the right button, know when you reach the right floor, get out of the elevator, things like that. For robots, it's very, very hard. It doesn't know anything. Today, Boston Dynamics and other robots are usually controlled manually. So you move forward, you move to the right, you move the arm manually. We did something very, very different. We actually changed it from manual control into task control. You're basically telling the robot, I want to enter the elevator. It goes to the elevator, it finds the button, it pushes the button. Then you want to go to the second floor, third floor, it knows how to look for the number 3. There's a button next to 3, it pushes 3, it goes out. So it's all about autonomy, but guided by a human. That's our secret sauce. The same thing for drones in Gaza, right? Go into the building or even break the building, breach the door, go inside, look for a bad actor, do whatever you need to do, that's it. So it's all about removing manual controlling, moving into tasks and mission-oriented autonomy.
So how are the drones being used? So you have drones in 3 war zones right now, let's say, we have in Gaza, Lebanon, and Ukraine, correct? How are they being used differently? Are there different drones in different places? Tell us more about the unique needs.
So a drone and a robot are very good at one thing very, very well. So for example, indoor drone is guarded by plastic, so if it hits the wall, it doesn't fall down. It has a lot of sensors, so it can fly without GPS inside the building. But it's bad at flying for a long time, long distances, so everything is fit for purpose. And therefore you need, many of them to complete the mission. We talked about before, if you have a bad guy in the building, you need several types of drones and robots to actually operate together. This is why we've created a unified control that actually connects all of them in one system. And you basically give them tasks. You two go into the building, you watch them from behind, and maybe a ground robot would walk through the door. So it's a synchronized operation using one software and one controller that one can operate from basically anywhere.
So Hezbollah, which is in Beirut, but also southern Lebanon, so Lebanon's rural, Hamas is as urban as it gets. So tell us about the missions, and do you create different drones? Do you have different pilots? How does it work when you have such two dramatic different? So
we're trying to replace soldiers at the most complex environment and maybe riskiest missions. So for example, an urban area like Gaza has the most risk, as opposed to an open field where you can hide, or a sniper can be above you, someone can be around the corner. This is where people die, and this is where Xtend comes in. So we're actually expert at what we call the last mile, operating at these very, very interactive, complex missions. And when we talk about like indoor robotics or indoor drones, it's more urban. They have to go from the outside to inside. They have to move from GPS to non-GPS operations. In order to do that, we actually had to get rid of GPS and use our own sensors to know where we are, create a map, create an obstacle avoidance system. And what's interesting, when this war started, no one ever thought that GPS would be completely gone. So what we did is we took all of this technology from the indoor drones into the outdoor platforms as well. So now that our outdoor platforms are flying just above buildings and high, they also need to use algorithms and sensors to fly without GPS. So for us, it was very easy to do this migration from an indoor-based technology system to an outdoor environment, and now that's part of every robot and every drone that flies and operates with the operating system.
So did you say the gap between the technology and the hardware of drones that are used indoor and outdoor is going to close? Like they're going to look more and more similar in the future?
They are. When we operate, they look very, very similar because you cannot rely on GPS.
Right.
And when you don't have GPS, you need to localize yourself. You need to know where you're going, where you are.
And that's all on cameras or LiDAR, or how is that? 'Cause since it's autonomous, I assume.
So we use
a human flying. I try to fly a drone indoors. It's not very good.
Yeah.
It's once they're indoors, is it all autonomous? Is it using LiDAR not to crash into things? Explain to us.
So it has a good question. It has what we call a self-localization system. It's using LiDARs for the Z-axis to know how high it is, and it's using cameras to know where it is on the X and Y axis, and it's using the front camera to do SLAM. It's called SLAM, obstacle avoidance, basically understanding where am I, what is my environment, and how can I not hit obstacles. From there on, it's guided by a human or guided by AI. And what's the difference? So a human guidance system is basically a human telling him, go through the window, go through the door, let's look at this room, let's go there. We've actually reinvented the mouse by creating an interface where you basically point at what you want to do. Now, in the last 2 years, that interface moved to AI as well. So we can have an AI pilot, someone who's not real, a virtual pilot, moving that cursor around and looking for targets. That has a lot of scalability because now you can have 10, 100, 10,000 AI pilots flying these drones. And you can actually tell them, let's take a search and rescue site. You send 100 drones, go and look for people. And they just fly these drones between the buildings, underneath the ground, without any human pilots. That's the magic here, and this is how you actually scale robotics tremendously using our technology.
Should we be scared?
Scared? Yes, because I think, not scared, but we should be aware that our enemies have access to high-end technology on YouTube. Anyone can build a drone today. Anyone can build a drone that can now fly 100 miles per hour. Very, very hard to stop it. How can you stop a drone that flies that fast?
A cool marketing idea, if you had build your own drone for kids, just to give away a swag, like a simple one. I think that'd be cool. That's the marketer in me talking. Okay, so what's scary isn't just the quantity of them in the swarms, and how inexpensive it is, but the AI or the fact that it's autonomous. Hey, here's the upload a picture of my face, find this guy, kill him. I'm like, thanks. I'm like, so that's kind of. It's been there. I mean, we've been using that for years, even I think before even the war with Hamas. What do you think about the future of AI and pilot training and within drones? How much better could it get? It feels like it's hard for me to imagine swarms that can operate autonomously on their own, communicate with one another, find any target, kill it, return, loiter or fly for 48 hours, cost them does it get more advanced than that?
So what happened in the war is that we found that a lot of countermeasures are used to actually jam the drone. So communication was a very big issue. And what do you do without communication? So we did two things. One, we started to use fiber. Drones actually have a fiber running between the operator and the drone themselves.
What do you mean by fiber? Like a literal physical?
Like a glass, like a fiber, like you have with your internet.
Right.
So a physical fiber cable between the drone to the operator, and the fiber actually made the drone resilient to jamming. But that wasn't enough because fibers can entangle. They are limited in length, and then we started really scaling up what we call AI pilots. So what is an AI pilot? It's basically a virtual pilot flying the system. It is limited, but it's getting more and more smarter as we go. So we have today about 5 to 6 AI pilots already qualified. For example, we have an AI pilot that knows how to, so if I have one drone flying, I have an AI pilot that can basically follow this drone. What is it good for? It's good for swapping if you lose battery. It's good for having a swarm flying together to do ammunition targeting. We have an AI pilot that can do homing. So once you find a target, kill that target. It's a smart pilot that doesn't need communication with the pilot. It knows what it needs to do, and it would hit that target. So we actually have an AI pilot school in the company, and that AI pilot school has 3 phases: exploration, engineering, and flight deck. Flight deck is where actually you have these pilots actually as part of the system. As a human pilot, you can actually call them up and use them, and they actually form a new era of human-machine collaboration where you can actually talk and work with drones. So if I'm a soldier on the ground, I can call a drone to help me. I'm gonna look at this drone and tell him, hey, I'm gonna go into this building, you go in front of me.
So you can literally summon it.
You summon it, and you give it a mission. So it's not only bad, it's not only...
well, it's a tool. It depends who has it, good or evil people.
Yeah, so we're trying to be more advanced than the evil people.
How's that going?
We are better right now, yeah. We're doing everything we can to help our soldiers. Because we are operating in a closed loop environment with our customers. So, soldiers are using our technology, coming back saying, hey, this was good, this was bad, fix it. So we always improve our product, and it's becoming a very, very operational and fit for purpose technology.
When they first use Xtend, when they first use your technology, soldiers, what are they most excited about? What are they like, oh, this is so cool, this helps so much?
Reducing training time by 99%. And that made them capable of executing really complex missions. Because it's not only
Instead of doing like 2 weeks of training, it could be
Instead
done
of doing
in a
like
couple
3 months, it's 5 minutes.
Right.
That's it. You're welcome after this interview to go and fly drones. You're going to see that it's like that. In a few minutes, you're like an expert pilot. You fly a swarm of drones, and the only thing you need to do is basically tell them what to do. You don't need to manually fly them. This is why it's that easy. And because it's easy, you can now do more things. I can now fly inside a building. I can do like a loitering munition. I can hit UAVs in the skies. So it's very, very easy, which makes everything, the whole mission, much more simpler. And anyone can actually, any simple soldier can now actually do a complex airstrike within a few minutes of training.
My understanding is that every infantry soldier carries a drone on himself. Is that true?
Not everyone, every team. So
every team. So out of how many?
Like 11 soldiers, maybe 10 soldiers.
Will have one drone?
Yeah, that's the most I heard.
The most. And when you get feedback saying this isn't working or I would like improvements from soldiers, can you tell us some about the feedback that you get for improving?
Wow, many feedbacks from, some of them on the user experience, some of them on the battery life, some of them, I hate how this drone is being packed in my bag. It's too big, it's too heavy. Actually, interesting one. We've had a lot of feedback saying, I don't have room for your drone. This is a relatively small drone. I can't carry 3 of them in my backpack. It's too big. I mean, it's not too big, but they have to carry water and weapons and food and communication devices and whatever. So we did something clever. We said, don't carry drones. The drones would come to you. A soldier can actually summon a drone. The drone would actually come, either land or be in front of him, and then he would actually use it.
In that case, can't they summon their wood, or the drones can be summoned to bring their wood or bring their food, and the soldiers can have even a lighter payroll, just carry ammunition and...
Of course they can.
Why aren't they?
They are.
Okay, we didn't say that.
The problem is, again, the jamming, the spoofing of GPS.
Right, you need it there. You need 100% to make sure it's available.
How do you know where the soldier is without GPS? How do you know where the drone is? How do you connect it? That's the challenges that we're facing today.
Can you talk about spoofing and GPS jamming and how that plays a role? Yep. The technology behind it seems so simple, and how do you avoid it? How is it used? And also, what I found interesting is I was reading on how Russia and Ukraine were using drones against each other. You're jamming an area for drones, but it can also hurt your own. It makes it hard for yourself. Yeah. So how does that work out?
When you jam GPS, it's like a dome or like an area. So you jam your own systems as well. So if they lose GPS, you lose GPS, right?
Right.
It's the same thing. When the war started, we thought GPS is like 1 or 0. Either you have it or you don't. That wasn't the case. It was spoofed. What does that mean? So you're flying now, and the drone immediately thinks I'm now in Egypt. So the algorithm actually fools the drone. And what does it do? It says, okay, I'm in Egypt, but I need to be in Gaza. Okay, so let's fly north. So suddenly the drone flies like 10 kilometers until it loses battery and crashes somewhere.
Right.
That was the problem, and this is why some big American companies, when they tried entering this war in Israel, very quickly just said, okay, this is too much for us. We were never trained on spoofing. We had either yes or no GPS. What we did, we created an anti-spoofing algorithm. So very deep AI algorithms that basically tell the drone, this is a valid GPS location, this is not a valid GPS. If it doesn't have GPS, so we actually use our algorithms, SLAM, to actually know where we are. It's not as accurate as GPS, so it's not like 1 meter accuracy, a bit more. A bit less accurate, so a bit...
Like 10 meters?
It's classified, but it still allows you to navigate.
The spoofing's fascinating, but there's probably the biggest or the most talked about drone company in the world right now is Anduril. Mm-hmm. Do you guys play a part? Do you guys compete? Do you serve each other?
Anduril is an amazing company. So they have an amazing C2. They basically buy companies that complement them. So a command and control is as good as the systems underneath it. So we've been working alongside Anduril. They do more like battle management system, and we do more the last mile. Mm-hmm. The interactive missions, the ground, the swarming, the counter UAS, the everything on the ground level that actually completes what Anduril does. We've been always called the Israeli Anduril. I don't like that analogy.
No, I don't either. I don't think that's justice.
Even if they call us the Israeli Apple, I don't like, compared to an entity.
Correct.
I just don't like that.
I heard Anduril is the American Xtend. Is that true?
Of course. Great. So I'm sure they don't like that analogy as well. We are working in a similar fashion. So we are a software company. We acquire companies. We already acquired 2 companies as part of our go-to-market strategy. We're thinking software, we're thinking AI. So we're actually growing in a very similar pattern. And one day we're going to work together as well.
Very cool. On your X profile, on your description, You wrote, "Dream it, get it." Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that?
I've been an entrepreneur for my entire life. My first business startup was at the age of 10, and right now it's like number 20. I'm not counting. I can tell you that Xtend is definitely the most impactful and important things I've done in my life. I had the power and the privilege to save people. Who does that? My previous companies, like in sports tech and others, were great, amazing. They did amazing content, whatever. But Xtend has really revolutionized how people are de-risking themselves in very critical missions, which is breathtaking. It's amazing. Everyone who works in this office understands that, and this is part of the mission and part of the drive. That this is why we wake up in the morning.
It reminds me of Herzl's favorite famous quote, "If you will, there is no dream."
It's a similar thing. I mean, dream it, get it means that if I want to do something, I'm going to do it.
Right, and that's it. Yeah. It's the difference between
that's it. It's done.
Turning dream into execution. I love that. Yeah. So you won 2 Emmys. I know that's like a really weird segue.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Yeah, so I'm an aerospace engineer. I have a defense company, and I have 2 Emmy awards. Right? It doesn't add up.
Yeah.
So part of being an entrepreneur, my previous company managed to build and reconstruct reality in 3D space, allowing for people to actually experience sport in a more immersive and personalized manner. We won 2 Emmys for the best technology in sports. One with the Yankees, and one with NBC Monday Night Football, where we actually projected the game from the eyes of the quarterback before he threw the ball.
Oh, that's you?
Tom Brady, yeah. He was about to throw the ball, the camera went into his mind, into his head, and they would look like left, right, and then he threw the ball. So we got an Emmy award for it.
That's so cool.
Eventually, Intel acquired this company for about $200 million. Xtend has the same founders, the same engineering team, so we're this crazy bunch of people going from one startup to another. But yeah, I have 2 Emmy awards. It is what it is.
What do you think, before we end, what do you think is the future of the tech ecosystem in Israel? We're going to see more, you think, manufacturing, like we're doing drones, maybe more hardware. Just want to get a lot more defense tech, I would presume. Where do you see us going?
I really hope that there's a very, the defense ecosystem here is amazing. There's amazing companies that do defense technologies, probably one of the best in the world. I mean, look at Iron Drone, look at companies like Xtend revolutionizing warfare. But there is no defense money. They're very, very hard to find VCs like recently Protego, right? So that's the first VC that actually says, hey, there's so much technology in defense, let's invest in these companies. So for companies like us growing in Israel, it was very hard raising money. How can you go to these VCs that are looking for these gaming SaaS models? And I'm saying, hey, I'm not a SaaS company. I'm selling things for governments. So I hope this ecosystem will change and more money will be poured into law enforcement defense companies here in Israel.
I hope so too. Yeah. Aviv Shapira, thank you for being on Israel Tech.
Thanks a lot.
And for those of you at home, please Please make sure to like and subscribe. And thank you so much for being fans, and we'll see you in the next episode.